How's it going, Grizzlies fans? ZIAIRE Williams has been traded to the Brooklyn Nets in what is essentially a salary dump. As it turns out, that news came before I posted today's episode. Today's video episode is basically all about Zach Edey and the Summer Grizzlies. It has no analysis of this ZIAIRE Williams trade, which again is a salary dump. I assume that means Luke Kennard is going to get signed very, very soon. But on today's episode, I mentioned briefly about the Grizzlies roster of their main squad and how they haven't traded ZIAIRE Williams yet, but they're going to. So just so you know, when you hear the rest of today's episode, it was recorded and edited before the news broke that ZIAIRE Williams finally got traded, moved to the Brooklyn Nets. So thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Morant with a running start. Elements. Oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. Zach Edey played. Zach Edey got hurt again, but the Grizzlies still win. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about every time Zach Edey touched the ball. I'm also going to talk about G.G. Jackson's passing, and we'll talk about MVP Scotty Pippen Jr. continuing to make plays. Before we get there, just a word from SeatGeek. If you're buying tickets for any event, check out SeatGeek. They have an easy-to-use app that's color-coded to let you know when you're getting a great deal. And if you're a first-time user, you can use my promo code FASTBREAKBREAK, and SeatGeek will give you $20 off that purchase. So if you're shopping for tickets on the secondary market, give SeatGeek a shot and use my promo code FASTBREAKBREAK, and SeatGeek will give you $20 off that purchase. All right, the big news for the Grizzlies game against the Pelicans was the return of Zach Edey. We had been waiting. Some of us lost hope that we were actually going to get to see him play in Vegas Summer League. The line all along had been Zach Edey's going to play at Summer League, just not yet. And it made sense when you think about it. With the back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday, no one thought he would play in both of those games. So he missed Wednesday. It stood to reason he would play Thursday. However, it did feel a little bit like the Charlie Brown, Lucy with the football situation where, all right, we thought he was going to play, and then he never played. So maybe some of us lost hope. But in fact, Zach Edey was available for the Grizzlies on Thursday. He started the game. He looked great. He dominated, I would say. Maybe not dominated, but he was great in the first quarter. He showed, I think, enough already where you're like, this guy is going to be a legitimate weapon in the NBA. The very first offensive play for the Grizzlies was to post up Zach Edey. Throwback to 1990s basketball. G.G. Jackson threw it to Zach Edey. Zach Edey made a little short hook shot. That accomplished two things. Maybe many things. One, it gave Zach Edey a touch, gave him a bucket. Two, it gave G.G. Jackson the elusive assist. G.G., of course, had gone 2 straight games without an assist. That was a major topic of conversation among Grizzlies fans leading up to this game, and I feel like they did it on purpose. Let's have G.G. throw it to the big guy. 2 birds, 1 stone. Edey scores. G.G. gets an assist. Well, G.G. then assisted Zach Edey's second bucket. This one was a more impressive pass from G.G. He drove towards the basket, drew the help, dropped it off to Edey for the dunk. And so Edey played well in that first quarter. I'm going to talk about it even more in just a second. But then again, the most important thing here is he gets injured. He comes back in for his second stint in the second quarter, and he twists his ankle trying to contest a shot. This was a different ankle that he hurt against the Jazz in the Salt Lake City Summer League. That was his left ankle. On Thursday, he twists his right ankle. So I think we could say, one, he's done for Summer League. There's no chance he's coming back and playing, I wouldn't think. They're going to be ultra conservative. I would say just based on the PR, even if he was essentially able to play. So this was not a re-injury. There was nothing about the team feeling pressured to put him out there too early or anything. I mean, I think it's actually the opposite. I think he could have played way earlier than this. He just jumped. He has huge feet, didn't have anywhere for them to land, and he goes down in a heap, twists the ankle. You could tell he was visibly frustrated and also audibly frustrated. The on-court mics caught a lot of his reactions and the things he was saying and his frustration about getting hurt and not being able to play. And, you know, what does this mean overall for the Grizzlies? Like, does this mean Zach Edey has injury concerns? I think it's a slightly fair question. I know he was very healthy at Purdue. Maybe there's something about the NBA game where it's more risky. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a freak accident where in 2 games for the Grizzlies, he's rolled his ankle both times. But I do think if there's any conclusion to be drawn from it, it, for me, just kind of speaks to the fact that the Grizzlies probably still need another big on the roster. Right now, if Zach Edey is not available to play for the regular season, you'd have Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama available. And again, this is assuming perfect health for all those guys. And then you'd have Trey Jemison on your 2-way. Is that enough? I think it's enough for a lot of games, but it's not really enough in my mind for an actual full NBA season because injuries are going to happen. You have Brandon Clark coming off of that Achilles injury. You have Jaren, who traditionally misses a fair number of games. You also have a team that is not comfortable usually with their guys playing multiple back-to-backs. If the Grizzlies schedule comes out and there's some like 3 games in 4 night situations, like are the Grizzlies going to have enough bigs on the roster, or are they going to be able to just use Trey Jemison to fill the gaps in the lineup when bigs are missing? I don't know. It seems like we're still at least a big man short, but we wish Zach Edey would get better. We're disappointed he did not get to play more, but the upside is, like I already said, I think he's demonstrated enough in like 1.3 Summer League games. This guy is going to be an absolute weapon out there. The 2 dunks he had in this game, like Jake LaRavia found him for 1, where it was just so easy. There's a huge man in the paint. Oh, his man doubled you? That was a mistake. Just throw it up. He's going to catch it. He's going to dunk it. Also, there was a time Zach Edey got double-teamed. It was hilarious. The Pelicans double-teamed Zach Edey, and it did not affect Zach Edey whatsoever. He just stood there patiently waiting for Grizzlies players to cut. Like, they didn't knock the ball away from him. He didn't panic. He just stood there huge, holding the basketball like, what are you going to do? And when it comes to the regular season, yeah, the defenders will be better. Yeah, there will be moments where he gets trapped, swarmed, probably turns the basketball over. But also, I don't think they're going to double team Zach that much, because if you double team him, then somebody on the Grizzlies, John Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Marcus Smart, Vince Williams Jr., Gigi Jackson is going to have an advantage. So that's going to be great. Also, the space he creates rebounding, that's going to translate. There was a play in this one where Isaiah Miller got the run-out dunk, where Zach Edey just basically, he contests a shot by being gigantic. The rebound comes to him. No one can get close to it because he's boxing everybody out. Then he just, gets the ball quickly to his point guard. Pippen finds Isaiah Miller streaking towards the basket for a dunk. So I think Zach Edey, the player, is going to be an awesome weapon for the Grizzlies. It's one of the unique advantages, I think, of all the guys who got drafted this year that's going to immediately pay dividends. Now, hopefully the twisted ankles is just a random thing about Summer League. Maybe when you get into the NBA and players are even more coordinated, there's maybe less bodies on the ground you could trip over. But right now, I got to say I am worried about the injury issues with Edey, because if you remember that first game in Salt Lake City Summer League, I pointed out that Edey fell in a manner I would describe as catastrophically several times. Like, there were numerous times he came crashing down to the ground, and I'm watching this guy for the first time where he's on my team, and I'm like, oh no, that was a horrible looking fall, and he was fine until the last time where he wasn't fine, where he twisted his ankle. And so now for him to have another issue where he fell down, he stepped on somebody's foot, it does make me worried for Zach Edey staying healthy come regular season. But as far as the on-court play, absolutely delighted with the few minutes I saw of Zach Edey. He finishes this game 3 for 3 from the field, 6 points, 3 rebounds. Also got a block. Yves Missy did a little weak post move, and it had no chance of working. Although Yves did get him back later with like a nice little left-handed shot over Edey. But Zach Edey, 8 minutes played, 6 points, 3 rebounds. Now for the rest of the game, I was interested in the fact that Jake LaRavia played. Like, I had my doubts that Zach Edey was going to play, but I texted a friend, like, I thought he was going to today. I put it at 51%. I was like, yeah, I assume he's actually going to play on Thursday. There's no way they keep not playing him when they said they were going to play him. But Jake LaRavia, I assumed because of his injury that he suffered against the Mavericks that he wouldn't play. Well, he did play in the first quarter, but did not return. He only got in 7 minutes of playing time. He had 1 assist, that assist to Edey. He made 2 free throws, but Jake left this game, did not return with an ankle injury. And I am frankly unclear whether or not it is a re-injury. They said a sore ankle for this game. I thought he had missed the previous game with a sore knee. So I don't know. I don't want to call him Ake LaRavia again because he's played so well at Summer League, but whoops, I just did it. So Jake LaRavia dealing with injuries. That's the only, I guess, downside to his Summer League. And that also, it's a concern for his career. He's had multiple injuries in his career that have kept him off the court. I mean, even when he wasn't in the Grizzlies rotation, this is one of those things where he was always on the injury report. And my maybe off-color joke then was just like, how's he always hurt? He's not even playing games. Like, he's always on the injury report for, I guess, stuff that's happening at practice. But Jake LaRavia keeps battling seemingly these little nicks, scrapes, bruises, bumps, whatever, and is unable to play. Now, as far as the guys who made it through the entire game, the story of this one is twofold for me. One, Scotty Pippen Jr. still dominating. He had 17 points, 11 assists, had 6 rebounds. He really took the game over, I felt like, in the third quarter, had 3 steals, I think all of them in the second half. And then Gigi Jackson finishes with 6 assists. Yeah, the first 2 were to Zach Edey, but he kept moving the basketball around. And I do think this is not totally unrelated to his performance in previous games. I think maybe they were whispering in his ear, hey, buddy, you have 0 assists the last 2 games. He had 1 assist in the first 3 games at Vegas Summer League. Gigi got more assists in this game than he had in the previous 5 Summer League games he played combined. Another way to emphasize how impressive Gigi getting 6 assists is, he's never had 6 assists in a game before. Last year on the Grizzlies, 4 was the most he ever had in a game. So good job, Gigi. So he comes off a 27-point game. You know what's better than 27 points? 17 points and 6 assists. Pretty sure 17 points and 6 assists is better. I mean, maybe when you factor in the shooting numbers, the 27 points was better. Gigi only made 4 out of 14 field goal attempts in this one. He did get to the line a good bit. He was 7 out of 8 from the foul line. This is on the heels of a 4 for 9 free throw performance. But Gigi, I thought, with a very good all-around game. The three-pointer he made in the first quarter, the logo 3, I mean, that was such a deep shot. I don't know if it's a good shot, but hey, it went in. Also, he made a big 3 in the fourth quarter, part of an 11-0 run that was mainly due to Dickie Giroux. But Gigi made a big fourth quarter 3, and then he iced the game with a tremendous crossover Euro step thing towards the basket. And he's shown enough, even if we are nitpicking about his playmaking, he's shown, I think, so much in the Summer League that you just have to be ecstatic about his future and how young he is, and the fact that he's younger than many of the one and done guys in this year's draft class. Gigi helping lead this undefeated Grizzlies team, that has the best point differential in Summer League as of this recording. Yeah, GG's been great, and I do think maybe he had to warm up some. His first game in Salt Lake City was terrible. His next one was okay. His first game in Vegas, okay. And then maybe he's really hitting his stride now. He's playing very comfortably. And also the rebounding. Like, the rebounding is not nothing. He came into the game averaging 10 rebounds per game. That number went down. He only got 7, but still 7 rebounds from his spot is pretty good. Although I guess he's kind of being a power forward. But 3 offensive rebounds. It continues being the offensive rebounds that I like. The way he's hustling and getting in there and pulling down the ball in a crowd. That's specifically a good skill for GG. And of course, it's something the Grizzlies main roster desperately needs. They're a little bit short on rebounding up and down the roster. Now, Scotty Pippen Jr., like I said, 17 points, 11 assists, 3 steals. The start of the third quarter is when he really popped. This game was close throughout in the first half. The Pelicans were up by a few buckets. They were shooting the ball pretty well, but it was tied after 1. It was tied at halftime. But then, the beginning of the third quarter, the Grizzlies were in a post up for Scotty. He hits a cutting Jalen Wells for a dunk. Then Scotty picks the pocket of the Pelicans dribbler for a breakaway layup. 2 possessions later, he gets another steal for a layup where he finishes in traffic impressively. That put the Grizzlies up 5, which was their biggest lead up to that point. And so from then on out, the Grizzlies basically were ahead. The Pelicans did end up tying it in the fourth quarter, but then that's when this 11-0 run took off. And that was all about one Dejan Deke Giroux. Deke had 8 points in this 11-0 run. He made 2 3-pointers in the run. He got a pick 6 on an inbounds pass. He took a heat check. I don't think I've ever seen Deke take a heat check 3. He missed it. But if you go back to the last game, Deke had made 4 consecutive 3-pointers. So I guess he was due a heat check. So Deke had a great game off the bench with 15 points, 2 steals. Again, being the huge catalyst for that fourth quarter run that basically decided the game for the Grizzlies. Now, let's look at the other players who played in this game. And we'll also think about the Grizzlies depth chart now that we've had so many Summer League games. And we'll do all of that right after this short break. All right, I went over Zach Edey's play in depth, talked about G.G. Jackson, Scotty Pippen Jr., and Deke Giroux, also Jake LaRavia, who left the game early with injury. The 5th starter, so they started LaRavia, Edey, Jackson, Pippen. The 5th starter was Jalen Wells. This was, I believe, Jalen Wells' best performance in the Vegas Summer League. Jalen had 15 points, and he got some shots up. He also blocked a couple of shots. He was only 3 out of 9 on his 3-pointers, but I thought all the looks were good. And an important reminder, 3-point percentage in Summer League historically has almost no predictive value. What you're looking for are the shots the right shots to be taken, and what does the shooting form look like? And to me, although I'm an amateur, to me, it looks good. Both things look good. I thought all the shots taken were good decisions, and the shooting form looks really good. So I was impressed by Jalen Wells' impact on this game, scoring those 15 points, also making some defensive plays. So a really, I thought, strong game from Jalen Wells. Now, as far as the rest of the bench, we should highlight Trey Jemison, who, of course, ended up with a bigger role once Edey went down. Trey Jemison was a plus-minus monster in this one, a plus 22 in his 24 minutes of playing time. He was 5 out of 7 from the field. 10 points, only got 2 rebounds. He blocked a shot. He was guarding a lot on the perimeter, and I assume that's the game plan. He was showing a lot of effort. It was one of those things where you could see like, oh, he's trying really hard. He's hustling out on the perimeter guarding these smaller players. The problem is he was beaten a lot off the dribble for layups. And so I don't know if maybe he was too aggressive out on the perimeter. That's a question, I guess, for the coaching staff. But Jemison continues to perform to a degree where I feel like you feel comfortable with him being on that 2-way. But I still think that maybe you want to keep your eyes open to find out if they're going to keep the roster kind of as is, which is maybe not adding another big to the main roster. Is Trey the best option you can have there? Perhaps. He seems like a great guy, probably good for the locker room. He's extremely physically imposing, incredibly strong. But is that the best center you can get on your two-way spot if that's going to be an important role on this team that's going to need bigs? If you only have Jaren, Zach, Brandon, and Santi, is Trey Jemison the best use of your two-way spot? I'm not saying I have other names out there that I would use on it, but I do think if they don't make a move for another big, you have to be thinking about how do we best maximize our two-way spots. And so I would guess they're keeping their eyes open to see if somebody shakes free that maybe could be a better option. But for now, I guess it's good enough. And I think Trey's done enough in Summer League where you feel like, okay, that is fine to have. If nothing better shakes free, then we'll just stick with him, and that will be okay. Also off the bench, Isaiah Miller. Isaiah Miller had 2 highlight dunks. The first one off that Scotty Pippen Jr. assist. The second one, he stole an inbounds pass and got to do basically a dunk contest dunk. An unbelievable SportsCenter highlight for Isaiah Miller. He finished the game with 3 steals, 6 points, missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts. He has put together almost the same stat line in every game. Misses his 3-pointers, gets a bunch of steals, is kind of fun to watch. I don't think he has an NBA role, but he is entertaining in his 6-foot frame, harassing ball handlers, forcing turnovers, and then dunking the ball ferociously. Drew Pember played with the Edey injury. You had then Trey Jemison basically become the starting center, and then Drew was the backup center. He played 7 minutes, missed both of his field goal attempts, missed both of his free throw attempts. He blocked 1 shot, and Lucas Williamson missed both of his field goal attempts in 6 minutes. Now, by virtue of winning this game, the Grizzlies have advanced to the semifinals. Technically, they didn't actually clinch it until the Clippers only won by some X number of points. I don't remember what it was. But there still was a chance like the Spurs could have won by 60 and passed the Grizzlies in point differential. But the Grizzlies now, as of Friday morning, have clinched a spot in the semifinals of Summer League. Those semifinals will occur this Sunday. The Grizzlies will play at either 1 or 3 p.m. Central. If the Grizzlies win that game, the championship game is Monday night at 8 p.m. Central. The most Grizzlies thing ever would be holding guys out of either one of those games because they are back-to-backs. I hope the Grizzlies go for it. I mean, why not, man? Let's establish a winning tradition. Let's have some fun at Vegas and win those Vegas Summer League rings, championship rings for the players and the coaching staff. I think it would be a really cool outcome for this Summer League team. And I know the players want it. Like, the players want to win. So the Grizzlies, I believe now, regardless, have 2 more games. I can't remember if they play like a 3rd place game, so maybe not. But semifinals are Sunday. Championship game is Monday, and then we hit the real off season. And the question remains among the Grizzlies, like, what's going on with the roster? The Grizzlies still have an empty roster spot. They still have not signed Luke Kennard. ZIAIRE WILLIAMS is still on the roster. What are they going to do? Are they going to do anything? I think if you've missed it, if you're unclear why Luke Kennard hasn't signed yet, as best I understand it, and as best other people I've talked to understand it, the Grizzlies want to dump ZIAIRE WILLIAMS' salary to create more salary cap space under the luxury tax line so they can give Luke Kennard closer to the amount of money he wants. Yes, they could go ahead and re-sign Luke Kennard with ZIAIRE WILLIAMS on the team, and they could go into the luxury tax. They have full bird rights on Luke Kennard. They can pay him whatever they want to a degree. But for whatever reason, the Grizzlies are not comfortable doing that. There's been some theorizing, if you go into the luxury tax with Luke Kennard, maybe you lose some leverage on moving ZIAIRE WILLIAMS because then teams know you absolutely have to trade ZIAIRE Williams. I don't know how it's much different, though, than what's happening right now, because teams know that's what's going on. So no one is willing to believe you when you're like, oh, no, ZIAIRE Williams is good. You should want him. He's really good. So like right now, the Grizzlies are having trouble moving him, apparently. What they're looking for is a team that has one, a roster spot, and then two, has either cap space or a trade exception that could take ZIAIRE's salary. Also, they would need that team to not be anywhere near the luxury tax if it's one of the teams with like a trade exception. And then, of course, I guess 3, you want a team that actually desires ZIAIRE Williams. And so there probably aren't many teams, if any teams, that fit that description. So what do? I do not know. I also maintain, and I haven't said it in a while because I've just been podcasting nonstop about Summer League, I also maintain Luke Kennard is not the most important roster need on this team. I still think you need somebody who can play the 5 and the 4, or the 4 and the 5. Like ideally, I think you need another piece in the front court. I think you need another player who can fit alongside Jaren and Zach Edey and Brandon Clark. I think you need to have more versatility in your front court. Right now, if Jaren is hurt, let's just go through that mental exercise. If Jaren is hurt, you have Edey, Aldama, and Clark on your main roster. All right, I don't think Edey and Brandon Clark are going to work that well together. Maybe. Edey and Aldama offensively should work, but I have questions. Aldama and Clark, it works in theory, but I don't think that's like a really good playoff level front court rotation. Like that's an issue to me. What about when Edey misses? Well, when Edey misses, hopefully everyone else is healthy. You got Jaren and Brandon. That's an elite front court pairing. Jaren and Santi, that works good too. But the problem becomes, well, what about when Jaren is not there? What about if Jaren gets in foul trouble in a game where there's no Zach Edey? Then we're talking about Trey Jemison playing. Then we're talking about, I guess we're playing small. Gigi Jackson at the 4. I mean, I still think Gigi, like he's rebounded well. For me, Gigi is a 3. He's a small forward. In my dream, Gigi is like Jaylen Brown / Jason Tatum. Give me a 6'9", 2 or 3. Like I want more size out there, more size with skill. So like, the problem becomes what happens when guys miss. So I don't know what the option is. I don't know if the Grizzlies would still want to trade for a center. The problem still also goes back to the fact that they seem completely unwilling to go into the luxury tax. And I've been like racking my brain trying to come up with competitive reasons for why you wouldn't go into the luxury tax. I don't get it. If you go into the luxury tax, you could still get out of it later in the year. But even if you pay the luxury tax, there aren't that many like hindrances on you making the moves you might want to otherwise make. There's no risk of like repeater tax. The repeater tax is triggered when you go into the tax in 3 out of 4 seasons. I would put the over under of 2.5 seasons that the Grizzlies pay the luxury tax for the rest of my life. I don't see them being a repeater tax team. I don't see how it's an issue. I feel like with the rising cap, the cap goes up 10% each of the next 5 seasons. Next year, the luxury tax line is at $188 million. The year after that, it's at $207 million. The year after that, it's, I think, $227 million. The Grizzlies are not at risk of being a repeater tax team, even if they re-sign Jaren Jackson Jr. in a couple of years. So I don't get why they are operating as if they cannot pay the tax this one season. They always told us they would pay the tax if they needed to. I'm confused why they don't feel like they need to right now to build the best possible roster around Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Ja Morant and Marcus Smart the years they are under contract and healthy on the team. Like maybe it gets hard once you actually pay Jaren. But like you manage these things. And if you're trying to win, you pay money. Look at the teams that have made the finals for the last 10, 12 seasons. They all have big payrolls. There are very few teams not paying the luxury tax that make it far in the playoffs. I think the only team in the last 10 years to make the finals that didn't have a salary in the top half of the league was the bubble Lakers. Okay, they had LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I think to compete when your best player might be the 10th best player, which is what we hope maybe Ja Morant is. I mean, according to the Ringer, he's the 30th best player. But if you don't have one of the 5 best players in the world to compete, you got to spend. Look at the Celtics. I don't know how good Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are league-wide. They're arguably both top 10 players. But they have spent money everywhere else, assembling the best team around them. So you got to spend, in my mind, to compete, especially when you don't have one of the best players, like one of the top, 5 players in the world. So I feel like the Grizzlies need to spend. But I don't know if they're going to. I mean, that seems apparent they're not going to. Maybe they still say, when we have a chance to put together a title team or whenever it makes sense, we're going to spend money. But I've heard that story and I don't believe it. But anyways, maybe adding a Wendell Carter Jr. doesn't make you a title team. I think it makes you better. And it gives you more insurance for when things go wrong, for when Zach Edey twists his ankle or something. Just getting another player that you can play minutes to or can play playoff minutes, that is important to me. But I don't know what the avenues are right now. If the Grizzlies don't do anything, or if the Grizzlies, let's say they re-sign Luke Kennard and they salary dump ZIAIRE WILLIAMS, what does the depth chart look like? I haven't mentioned it in a while. I figure it's fun to update after seeing a lot of Summer League. Let's go ahead and assume Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr. start. I would guess a healthy Zach Edey starts. I don't think he's going to play that many minutes, but let's say he starts. I think there's an argument to actually start Brandon Clark, though. Here's my thinking. I mean, Brandon Clark already more of a proven NBA player, but I think the fit. I'm considering the fit. Ja, Dez, Marcus, Jaren, and Zach are all players who shoot the basketball. I mean, I think Zach can have a low usage role, but maybe you're not getting the most out of him if he's a low usage role. You don't necessarily want him to be just Steven Adams. You want him to be Steven Adams who can put the ball in the bucket. And that's what he is. So maybe it would make sense to start Brandon Clark, a guy who does not need to shoot the ball at all. He's just there to rebound and dunk. And then that way, maybe Zach gets more touches on a bench unit. This is another reason why I've kind of maintained, even if Marcus Smart starts, I would sub probably him out immediately or Desmond Bane out immediately to put a low usage guy in there, i.e. Vince Williams Jr. Because every shot that Marcus shoots is a shot that Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Zach Edey don't shoot if Zach starts. I think the goal for the Grizzlies this year is as many shots as possible should be taken by Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Zach Edey. But let's just say we're starting Marcus and Zach. Makes sense to me. Then I think your bench guys you're definitely going to play, or I would certainly absolutely play, Brandon Clark in your front court, and then I'm playing Vince Williams Jr. and G.G. Jackson. You have to continue to water the plant, so to speak, for G.G. Jackson. He needs to get minutes. He needs to play. The Grizzlies' dream of winning a title while not paying the luxury tax, it's probably all on G.G. Jackson and Zach Edey. It's all on internal development. So with the flashes Gigi is showing at 19, let's keep playing him absolutely 100%. A second unit of Vince Williams Jr., G.G. Jackson, Brandon Clark, and then say Luke Kennard or Santi Aldama. I think that works fine. Ideally for me, again, I'm moving some ball handling to the second unit. Let's say we start Marcus Smart. Desmond Bane subs out first. Then he checks back in with most of the second unit. Your second unit could be something like Desmond Bane, Luke Kennard, Vince Williams Jr., Gigi at the 4, Brandon at the 5. I love that. I'm not putting Scotty Pippen Jr. in my top 9, top 10 rotation. Sorry. Scotty is an emergency point guard. If every player is healthy, I think all the guard minutes should be played by Ja, Desmond, Marcus, and then also Luke and Vince. I like Vince as a guard, but I think right there, my top 9 would be Ja, Des, Marcus, Jaren, Zach, and then Luke Kennard, Vince Williams Jr., G.G. Jackson, and Brandon Clark. If you play a 10-man rotation, fine. Santi Aldama's in there. Also, I keep seeing maybe some people be talking about we got to free up a roster spot or salary space by moving Santi Aldama. I'm not big on getting rid of Santi Aldama for several reasons. I mean, beyond the fact that I kind of enjoy him. Yes, maybe he didn't take the biggest leap last year like we hoped, but first of all, we have to have bigs. Maybe you're not paying attention, but we need bigs. We can't lose any bigs unless we're getting bigs back. We need to add bigs. So first of all, we can't lose bigs. Second of all, I think he's shown enough where you probably still want to see what he develops into. I think if you put yourself into the mind of the people who drafted him, imagine you're a Grizzlies front office person who was really campaigning for the team to take Santi Aldama with the 30th pick. So far, what Santi Aldama has turned out to be in his NBA career is an excellent return on the 30th pick. He's a pretty good player. Maybe, again, he didn't become as good as you hoped last year. We hoped the progression would be linear based on his second year to his third year. It wasn't necessarily. But he's a gifted offensive player who's 6'11". He's still just 23 years old. If you believed enough in him to reach up and take him in the first round, I don't think you're going to be like, yeah, let's move him to create cap space. I think if you're one of those people who was arguing to draft him and you've seen what he's done through 3 seasons, you're probably saying, I want to see what this guy looks like when he's 26. What if he gets better at defense? What if his shooting becomes more consistent? I'm not in a rush to get rid of him. Now, if that's the price to bring back a better player, okay. If that's the price to move ZIAIRE's salary, that makes me sick a little bit. We shouldn't be paying things to move off a salary when we can pay the salary. But I'm not going to be quick to move Santi Aldama. I still feel like he could have a big role on this team next year, particularly when you look at the roster as it stands right now. But with that, we can wrap up this episode. I believe we have covered everything we needed to cover. Good job passing the basketball, G.G. Jackson. Good job, Scotty Pippen Jr., continuing your case for Summer League MVP. Good job, Zach Edey and front office for getting Zach Edey. He looks like he could be a game changer for the Grizzlies this year. Let's just get him the biggest high tops ever created and tape up his ankles really, really well. I'm not sure. What if he stopped jumping? He's tall enough. Zach, don't jump, man. Just play offense, push people around. I'm kidding. Anyways, thanks everybody for listening to these shows. If you want to support this program and get one bonus episode a month and join my Grits and Grinds listener Slack, you can do all of that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you like these shows, consider helping out. Patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.